Legislative and Policy Committee meeting to order. If we could please have a roll call.
Howard.
Here.
Ballard.
Here.
Collins. Here. Harris.
Here.
Moran. Harker.
Here.
Rice.
Here.
Juvenile.
Here.
And Hart. We also have Democratic Caucus Chair.
We have a quorum. Representative Reilly, could you please lead us to the
I
pledge?
certainly will. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We need approval of minutes for the regular meeting of April 12th.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Okay, we're going to move right along with some of our, with some legislative update, and we have a wonderful guest here, Elaine May from the Governor State University. If you can please maybe sit down, just a little quick back. Governor State is our only public university that sits in Will County. And everyone knows with everything that's been kind of going on with higher education as well as elementary K through 12. But there's some current concerns and some legislation that's out there, so I thought this would be appropriate to get a report. You could please push the star.
Thank you.
Put your mic down.
Thank you very much for just giving me some time at this meeting. First of all, I really appreciate this opportunity to give you an update on exactly what the chairwoman has said. Governor State University is Will County's only public university. And we're very supportive of Joliet Junior College. We're supportive of the private universities in this area. All together, I think we form a very good group of educational institutions, but we're the only public university. I first of all want to thank the board for supporting the reconstruction and widening of the university's gateway. And Mr. Brooks was so helpful, so many of you were so helpful with that. The Stunkel Road University Parkway. It's under construction now. It gladdens my heart every time I drive out there. That road was dangerous. That road said all the wrong things about the gateway to your one public university. And through your leadership and your investment and Larry Walsh's work and your work together, that road will be finished, we think, before the snows come. And you will have a party. Even if I have to pay for it myself, given our situation.
We'll be there.
Thank you, because we really, and what that road says is that it speaks volumes about your understanding of Governor State University's importance to Will County. As I greeted you each this morning, several of you told me about brothers, sisters, daughters who have graduated from campus, master's degrees from campus, little ones who received awards and ceremonies on the campus. So you can see that the campus is so important to this county. The university itself has received awards, but I'm not going to talk about that today, although we want to do everything we can to continue to make you proud of us. But with no state budget, there is not so much that is in our power. We're going to do everything in our power, but there's a lot of things not in our power. We're a young university. Governor State University usually depends on appropriations for 45% of our operating expenses. For this year, fiscal year 16, we received in April only about 30% of our expected appropriation. It was about $6.9 million. That could be considered a 70% cut. It's also important to note that GSU's base appropriation is the smallest in the state by $12 million, even though we're not the smallest university. And let me be quick to thank the representatives present here. Representatives Reilly and Batinick really do understand the situation that we're in. They have been actively fighting for public higher education in all its dimensions, and we appreciate that. So I just want to make sure to say a hearty thank you for it. But I just want you to know what the situation is. With no state MAP money, as it's called, that's the monetary award program for very low-income students, and that was not funded this year in any regular budget process. We assume liability for both fall and spring MAP funds, and the April stopgap appropriation covered only fall. So we're still on the hook for spring. Our students are low-income students, many of them first-generation students. They don't trust institutions. If we say, well, maybe you'll have to pay back the MAP money, they will not go to school. People ask me, who's your biggest competitor for undergraduates? My answer is, our biggest competitor is nowhere. And we can document that we lose students to higher education if our students don't go to Governor State University. Now, it's also the case that many of the universities, and we're included in this too, are subject to some of the unethical practices of some of our border states. We have an instance where Eastern Michigan University wrote letters to Illinois students saying, Illinois is in big trouble, come to Eastern Michigan. This happened to be a letter that we got in our hands. We know that much more of this is going on. So the effect on the reputation of Illinois is really not something that we want to see going forward. Now, we've been doing our best to manage our resources. We've drawn on funds that are set aside for emergencies, repairs like water main breaks. But guess what? In November, we had a water main break. We had to shut down the campus for the afternoon. We had to spend about $650,000 to repair that break. What will we do if other sections of our 45-year-old system breaks down? We're using that money to meet payroll now. And we have to just keep our fingers crossed in terms of emergencies. And what will we do about our 45-year-old roofs? And so this use of emergency money is not sustainable. We've been doing more with less for many years. And I have to say that, and Bruce Friefeld has been on our board of trustees for many years and a very careful fiscal manager, as you know. And I have to say that under the board leadership, we have planned strategically for bad times over several years. Bad times. But no one could possibly have imagined times as bad as this. We've eliminated 62 positions. We've laid off employees. We've shut down programs. We're a young university with forward momentum, and these actions are like being forced to eat our seed corn. And I know that many people in this room understand what a foolish practice that is. Last week, Standard & Poor downgraded us from A- to BBB+ strictly because of the state budget situation. They acknowledged that we were managing our resources well. Congratulations on that, they said. They said, oh, we hear about stopgaps, but that is meaningless, said Standard & Poor. Until public universities in Illinois have budgets, we're going to downgrade you. And how that helps, I don't know. And so our dependence on the state is dragging us down, even though we were commended by the Standard & Poor and Moody's for paying our bills and managing the limited resources that we have. We're doing everything possible to put students first. We've not sought headlines, but I thought it was important for you as Will County leaders to know that your public university is in trouble and needs your support. Back there.
Thank you for that update.
Thank you, Doctor, for actually coming today and expressing this. That is a very unique area also, Stumple Road. That's one road project that puts a smile on my face when I have to sit in traffic there, because you can see all the work going in the underground. They're improving the sewer system along there, water, they're relocating utility lines, and it's fantastic. But most of all, that investment, the Governor State, it actually puts that in human beings. That's where the investment is going. And the damage that's caused by discouraging one individual by not pursuing that education, that college degree, I think is immeasurable. I don't think we're going to know the actual repercussions of it for years to come. And basically, with the whole governmental process, it's almost like I'm watching a leveraged buyout of a corporation, and that doesn't work in government at this point in time, because there's human lives involved in this, and there's futures of human beings involved in this, and I think it's tragic. And I seen on Chicago Tonight, Channel 11, it was fantastic on there, and what you said was fantastic. So I mean, you actually put it in a perspective that, you know, I think everybody could understand. And again, thank you for all the work you do. I know in Eastern Will County, I know your name is highly revered. So, and then Bruce Friedfeld, he's the guy behind the scenes there, whatever. He's an advocate for Governor State University day in and day out. So thank you again.
Thank you very much. Chris, I'm pleased to answer any questions.
I just have a question about, I think the state should be funding you guys, I agree with that. But my question is more to the idea that when you talk about MAP money and grant money coming from the state or from the feds or anywhere, it seems like it's cheaper to send kids out of state than it is to have college in state. And part of the reason that I see why colleges have problems is that they raise the fees and the cost of tuition and everything else because they know that the government's going to increase the amount of money they give to students for grants and MAP money and loans and stuff like that. And so maybe that's something that probably you need to address with the state, because they're probably looking at it like it's unsustainable by increasing expenses all the time, and then they turn around and pass it on. And then the only way they can get money is from the taxpayers. So that may be, I'm not saying it is, because I don't know, I haven't seen the numbers, but that may be a problem.
Well, thank you. Let me say that Governor State University has the lowest tuition and fees in the state of Illinois. And we have worked very hard to keep it low. The MAP funds, you know, go directly to low-income students when they are available. The federal government does provide Pell money, which they've come through with this time. But Mr. Bowich, I would actually say that some of the stuff in the press about it just isn't documented. That
I haven't seen the numbers.
That it may have been so that private universities who that of course really high tuition is in private universities because they don't have any state aid. But in terms of the publics, there just was a big survey that showed that the increases, any increases in public tuitions across the country were directly related to the lowering of state appropriations rather than the opposite. So we've looked at that. It's important to look at that. But I will tell you that we have done everything possible, even in this incredibly challenging year. We did not raise tuition at all for the following year. Right?
Thank you. Thank you for being here. A question, did I hear you correctly that 45% of your revenue side comes from outside sources?
45% comes from state appropriation.
Right.
And that's an inside source, which has, you know, and it's the sort of thing that in my whole career in public higher ed, I've never thought that appropriations were optional. I've never been, I've been in other states, and this has just been a shock.
But you only received 30% of that 40%, 45%.
That's
correct?
correct. This year, because it was a stopgap measure, we were grateful for it. We were grateful for our representatives fighting for us to be included in that, because there was a chance that we might not have been because of various reasons. And we were, and you know, we were grateful for it. But right now, it's important to know what that funding was and what it wasn't.
Do you have a dollar value on what that would be?
Yes, it was
the difference between 100% funded and 30% funded?
The amount of money that we got from the stopgap was about $7.5 million. If you put in the reimbursement from the state MAP, it was a little more. but our appropriation in 2015, which had been reduced over the years already, was about 24 million.
Wow. Okay. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
This isn't going to be a really uplifting meeting, I'm telling you that right now. Just
I
be
appreciate,
prepared.
appreciate very much the opportunity here. I'll stay a bit and hear our representatives.
You hiding, birthday boy?
Looks pretty full up
there.
Nice.
Got cake and candles up here, brother.
So we have,
There's cake, I'm coming.
we have two very special guests. Which I shouldn't say everyone is very special that's in this room right now, but these two legislators have done some amazing things for us at the county. As we know, we had the House Bill 1191 with the quick take, which this incredible project that needs to begin sooner than later over there at Weber and 55. And Al, you championed it. And you out there, presenting it, and then we had Representative Batinick going in. That comment was excellent. It made me proud listening to the session. And yeah, guilty, I do watch those every time I can, every chance.
Somebody does one.
Well, that's one.
So I don't know how we're very fortunate. We have them for a quick report and synopsis of what went on with the end of session and with budget of going on. If you two want to come together and put it and sit at the table and kind of go from there, that would be wonderful. And this is, I'm going to say right now, we have a Republican and Democrat, sitting up at the table right here. And this is how, when we walk into this room, I really hope that's how we all think. We're doing for the best for the state and for the county of Will. And when all of you see me, as I've been, texting, these two men have been like our go-to guys. Just going out and asking, and the response has just been incredible. So, gentlemen, do you want to go first? Anyone?
Put your gold star on.
Gold star.
There we are.
This year, all right, Al?
No, we don't get gold stars this year.
Well, it's good to see everyone, Steve. All you guys, it's really good to see you. Champions for Will County, I think we do what we have to do for the area that we serve. Let me just say this, because we live in a climate where politics and partisanship aside, we seem to be driven by meme. We can't do that. We don't legislate by anecdote, but we shouldn't, at least. This is about real things. One of the things I want to say, it's good to have Dr. Maiman here. I belong to the National Conference of State Legislators, and everyone is proud of their colleges and universities all over the country. I certainly am proud of ours. World class, some of the best universities in the world we have right here. Sometimes we play a game, about what we don't have and all of this kind of thing. We have some great universities. They have gotten short shrift over the years. And the thing of it is it really hasn't been based on partisanship. Because I remember under Blagojevich, he just had a disdain for higher education and did not fund it. And that's when the diminution of resources really began. Governor Quinn cared a lot about higher, education, but sometimes when the arrow starts going downhill, it's hard to bring it back up. And of course, under the current governor, I've got my differences with him, but we're still struggling for the budget, and so we have those challenges. Again, if you're going to invest money in anything, and I've belonged to appropriations K through 12 and appropriations higher education for most of my career down there. That's been a while. We've got to invest in higher education. We have to. To paraphrase an old statement that Bobby Knight made when he said he was tired of getting beat by Purdue. I'm tired of seeing kids go to Iowa. And Steve, there's been massive studies, and so we can sit down and talk about them. about some of the reasons. Again, ideologically, some people may say, well, it's because of the administration. That's too easy. That's too easy. There's a lot of different factors, but we have to invest in higher education, plain and simple. And that'll be something we will continue to do. Stumple Road. Stumple Road was part of my transportation, or my 5-year transportation plan, for a lot of different reasons. We wanted to do something to that road to increase the access of all those people going down to Governor State University. There were other plans that were in the hopper at the time, but it's been something that's been on my plan a long time. It's coming to fruition. It's a great area, great opportunity to increase one's ability to move through that area. 1191. I think there's two things, regardless of ideology, that most people, Republicans and Democrats, can agree on. And that's the importance of K-12 education. That's also the importance of capital. 1191 was so much more than just, road expansion, interchange, and that type of thing. Anytime you can increase the level of commerce, increase the level of safety, that's something that you should do. And if you look at the votes on that bill, we got a lot of votes. And so I was happy to sponsor that. Emily McCasey did a great job. And we got it done. I would trust that the governor will sign it, very soon. And so that's a feather in our cap. And so I'm looking forward to the next projects, the next bill. Like I said, I've had 2 in a row. Well, let's see what we can do in the next session to help Will County continue to be the county that we want it to be.
You had a sheriff bill last year that got through. So
Yes,
yeah,
I did.
you're hooked. You're ours. Like, you're going.
Well, I've always been
We'll
yours.
have something.
Thank you. Mark?
He gave you a lot of broad theoretical reasons to support 1191. I live by Weber Road. That was one of my big reasons. That's been an issue for a long time. A couple things to hit on what the representative said and the president. There's going to be, I like the line that you said about foreseeing the seed corn. I wrote an op-ed a long time ago, right after I had taken office. I am on the Higher Ed Appropriations Committee when I started looking at some of the data. We lose, in the past, we've lost a net out migration of 16,500 college students per year. So to put that in perspective, our net out migration equals 2 Eastern Illinois universities. So it's like 2 Eastern Illinois universities worth of kids, now this is 14 numbers, are moving out of state. It's going to be worse. I'm concerned that it might be 25,000 or even more. And the issue with that is the last group you want to lose are tomorrow's high-income taxpayers. Because when we're all in nursing homes, right, they're going to be the ones that are going to be paying the bill for the bingo we like to go to on a Tuesday night. So in terms of it, I wrote that, I think the exact line was, our higher education crisis is a bigger crisis than our pension crisis. Because it doesn't matter what you do with pensions or capital projects or all this other stuff. If you're that demographically challenged, and if you look at other civilizations that have an aging population and have the youth moving out of the state, and then we're taking really the premium youth that are moving out of the state, it's an issue. A couple things that were troubling to me, and she had touched upon them indirectly, is that although she's the smallest university, or the smallest funding, even though she's not the smallest university, we've done historical funding for some reason in higher education. It's not based on population. So some schools aren't necessarily rewarded for having lower administrative costs or being more efficient. It's literally been, the discussion since I've been there has been, well, we're going to do this across the board, we're going to do this cut across the board, without taking a look into whether enrollment has increased or decreased at that particular school, which is really an odd way of doing it. So it's not just the size of the pie that's an issue, it's the size of each individual piece. And based on the stats that, essentially her size may not be, Governor State size may not be proportionate to what everybody else's pie size is. And on top of the other issues that we're facing, that's an issue as well. And we can certainly do some things to lower costs for them from a mandate standpoint. But you know, to add another bad thing to the log on top of everything else that's going on down in Springfield is it's a great line. The seed corn is a great line, because that is we have to fix that. I mean, that's been one of my priorities since I kind of realized it literally a month after taking office, when I started looking at the numbers. My oldest daughter left for a school in Missouri. She's not coming back. She's going to be certified in the state of Missouri. My son's about to leave for an SEC school. You know, my son was salutatorian, my daughter was third in her class, and those are going to be high income taxpayers to another state. So, so that is an issue. I'll address the budget. I assume you guys are going to have questions on that as well. There is, and the President touched on this as well, the idea of a stopgap or a short-term budget to get us through the election. And that does have, I think it's safe to say, bipartisan leadership support for the short-term budget.
For the most part.
I just wrote an op-ed. It's on rebootillinois.com. I'm not saying I'm not going to vote for a short-term budget. I just think we've kicked the can down the road for too long. I'm not sure what's going to change between now and November, other than election. I don't think Republicans are going to have a majority in the House or the Senate. In fact, I know that. And I don't know if there's going to be a dramatic swing in seats either way. So in my opinion, I used to say that property taxes and work comp were hurting the state from a business standpoint. Manufacturing leaving, jobs leaving, people even get hit with property taxes. The biggest thing I believe that's hurting the state right now is uncertainty. You know, I've had social service providers say, look, if you can guarantee me 90% of my funding for like the next 3 years, well, I can plan. This is part of what I wrote in my op-ed, is when you're dealing with, we had the 15 budget, the 15 fix, a quarter budget, maybe now a fix, maybe now a stopgap into 17, you can't make long-term decisions. And the way you save money is making long-term decisions. If you're a social service provider, are you going to sign a 5-year lease? Probably get a better deal on a 5-year lease. You're more likely to do a month-to-monthly for a short-term lease, because you don't know what your funding source is going to look like. You don't know whether you should hire somebody or fire somebody. If you fire somebody because you don't have funding, then you suddenly get it. You can't hire that person tomorrow. They may have gotten another job. So uncertainty is horrific for planning. Organizations, in my opinion, dislike, and certainly I'm sure you guys, you know, dislike the uncertainty that we're giving you now. So I think it's time the state steps up and provides some certainty, because right now I think that's kind of our biggest issue. So,
Mark, can I ask you, when you're talking about that along the same lines, and we have Sue, from the health department, and you know, we were all sitting in this room, and you were passing out the, you know, the text and showing, you know, we're getting ready that $700 million, you know, little break, like you said, stuff. I guess. And I know that the governor had gone and vetoed that. Is that gonna?
Well, I think he didn't veto that one yet. He vetoed 2049, which was
okay. So this one is still sitting.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought that was vetoed.
Yeah. No. Still sitting. Remember, nothing ever dies in Springfield. So it's still sitting. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just because as we know that has been. So did you have?
I was just wondering if I could make a comment. I'm Sue Olenick, the director of the health department. The fact that you state that the uncertainty is the worst thing is absolutely true. We've had a behavioral health services program for close to 60 years at our agency, a very successful program, some of it very model in the state. And the uncertainty is what's damaging it right now. We don't know, we can't plan, you're right, we cannot plan. We don't know what's around the corner. We just laid off 23 people and in another division, and we're building our budget for 2017, and I have to say it's ridiculous. We don't even know what to plan for. And so when those programs go away, when we can't plan and we can't budget and we can't support those programs and they go away, they're gone. Staff are gone, management's gone, clients are gone. You don't rebuild it. And it just seems like, you know, some people don't understand that. It's like, oh, we'll just bring them back. That doesn't happen.
Yeah, organizations don't have the on and off switches, so that's the.
And we understand that, and let's be honest. And the thing that I like is that this is a public policy forum. Politics permeates through everything, but it's basically a public policy forum. Some of our districts suffer more from the loss of social service agencies. I mean, they just do, plain and simple. And she's right. Many of them have left. They're not going to come back. One of the things I think that is necessary, and it is an election year, we've got all those other concerns, but sort of learn how to declare victory and move on, because we're all hurt by this. Everyone's district, whether you're Republican or Democrat, at some point will be, if it's not the schools, it'll be something else, hurt by it. We have budgets. There's all kinds of budgets. Many of you, of course, are facile with spreadsheets. We have spreadsheets. We got all kinds of programs, macros that you wouldn't believe. We go out to column ZA. Coming up with a budget document is easy to do. The policy behind it, how those monies are going to be appropriated and implemented and all of that, and how it becomes politically feasible. That's the tough thing, and that should not be the toughest part about this, but right now it is.
Did you have your picture?
I actually, I want to shift maybe from monetary issues and budget issues. And we've had a couple issues, and by the way, Representative Ryan, he is my representative, by the way, and I've worked with Al for many years. And by the way, when he took up the torch for Weber Road, keep in mind it's not his district, so I think that's really a special thank you.
But it is my county, and thank you so much.
It is your county.
He's being kind about all the years we've known each other.
So we've had a couple issues here recently in Will County. One deals with the quarries and construction debris dumping in quarries. And even though we felt we shouldn't be allowing quarries to be filled up with construction debris, it passed. The rules took a long time, but we really pushed for water monitoring, and it seems to be one of these issues that we just can't get through. Now I think it's in. I don't think it's actually where it's with the Pollution Control Board. Somebody has it, but I don't know why we struggle with something that's so common sense of monitoring water in a quarry that you're dumping in. Can you imagine if they start filling the Thornton quarry?
It would take a long time.
It would take a long time, but just think about it.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that, because MWRD is having a meeting out there tomorrow. We should, and those are things that I think are very important. What happens is, every bill is important. One would say some bills, like Animal Farm, all things are important, some things are more important. But that's a very important bill. We deal with those same kinds of issues, of course, in Cook County, and I've gotten together with CMAP as we try to deal with stormwater management and all those types of things. I think that that's something that might be another project for us to look at right here, excuse me, in Will County, and really put a lot of teeth behind it. You talk about planners and planning. I'm a former planner here in Will County, so I get it. But you have to put it in the forefront of the work project, otherwise it becomes just another bill. So I'd be, more than willing to work with you on that.
And the other issue, of course, is electronic recycling. Because of, and I do believe there's a legislative solution. Because of the manufacturer's contributions to that, which they do collect, but since they've changed how they're distributing some of those funds, it really closed down almost all the recycling centers in Will County. Now the county's in a position that we are subsidizing the electronic recycling in the county. And we do have a couple centers that open back up. Now fortunately, in Will County, we do have a landfill that we own. And there is a portion of those fees that are for recycling. So we did have a little bit of a revenue source. So we're probably one of the more fortunate counties. But I also think we need to address, here again, electronic recycling and how the manufacturers support electronic recycling centers. So, I don't know, Dean Olson is probably not here. But
No, but
but,
Brent is really up to speed on where we're even at with,
yeah, I mean, Brent can maybe make a mention of.
about the electronic recycling.
On both of those cases, we both introduced legislation on the groundwater monitoring that Emily and Casey has. We always get pushback on the groundwater monitoring because of the aggregate industry, quarry owners, and because we're unique in the situation, Will County has the most quarries probably in the state and the most potential for having these type of facilities. We're somewhat isolated with the other counties are not as precedent. So it's a little hard to get the ball up the hill, so we do need help on that. On electronic recycling, we passed a temporary bill last year because of the commodity markets with plastics and different things. The recycling industry basically shut down. They weren't accepting it, so when they went out to bid, the manufacturers found the lowest price in Indiana. The problem with it is they required us to separate, package, sort, and which means that instead of having just a drop-off site into a container where you put your stuff all combined, now somebody has to be there physically to accept it. So it eliminated a lot of things. We've been having ongoing meetings all spring. There's been a little pushback. There's been suggestions that we put a fee up front. Retail Merchants Association are opposing this, so we have a lot of moving sites. I do think that process will continue for the summer, and we might have a solution because the legislation that we passed a year or so ago was sunset in 2018, I think. Yeah. And so we have to have some solution because it's not working, and communities are starting to go out and start their own programs and charging. In Plainfield, we have communities paying for it, for example. They're paying it on our water bill now, we get charged for it. So that's going to start creating other problems because you're going to have some that have it and some that don't. So we are still working on both of them. But those are two important issues for Will County.
And I bring up those issues only because we don't need a budget for those.
Right.
Well, see, that's what I say. These are the other bills and important issues that sometimes get swamped up by the bigger things. Be glad you have the Brent, because one of the things that he said I think is very important if you want to really understand how we operate down there. He says, well, the retail merchants are against it. Lobbyists are extremely powerful, and to an extent they should be. They would say that what they do is provide needed information, on a bill. Well, you can look at that in many ways. But you do have other groups, who might be opposed to something that we may think is great. And that is why signing in, getting on those witness slips, coming down and testifying, and all of that is extremely important. Because there's always another side of the story, whether you think that they have a plausible point or not. And that's what we have to always fight against, and that's what we have to remember.
Along that lines, I like to put a positive spin on this also. I have 4 children. Basically, all 4 of them have college degrees or very close to it. Out of my 4, all of them attended a Illinois institution, secondary, and then 2 of them moved on to other states to receive their degrees because it was very specific on what the degree that they were looking for. And actually, 3 of them now are employed in the state of Illinois. My oldest daughter actually moved out to California, and if you want to talk about high prices, high taxes, high rent, high cost of living, go to California. I used to have a lot more hair before she moved out. Anyway, now she's looking to come back. She wants to relocate back to Illinois. So when I hear people say that Illinois is negative, bad, that everybody's moving away, I take offense to it because my family's moving back to Illinois, a portion of my family. And we have something that I was actually talking to some millennials about last night, and they all said the same thing. We have Chicago. We have the crown jewel of the Midwest. We have the lake. We have the Chicago that draws the millennials, that draws younger generations down there with the amenities, with the buildings, with the restaurants, with the public transportation. We also have the South Bay. And we have Will County. And I'm proud to be a resident of Will County. I have no intention of leaving Will County after I retire. And at the same time, Will County is actually moving forward. So which was very, very positive. My youngest daughter is down in at Methodist University for nursing in Peoria. Peoria is a beautiful city in the middle of the state. I mean, we're spending more time down there. So I mean, Illinois has a whole lot to offer, and I just pray daily that we actually get this thing fixed downstate, because the millennials, maybe the younger generation is not paying attention to it, but as the generations before them, I think it's our responsibility to straighten everything out and bring it back to where it should be. And again, we can move forward. We have everything here. We have the transportation hub. We have the intermodals. We have the canals. We have all the transportation that's extremely advanced. And we have the roads. I mean, it's a positive. Illinois has a whole lot of positives to offer here. So,
well, let me just say something real quickly. I spoke before. Hope somebody from Will County was down there. Transport Chicago. They had their convention, 31st annual, down at the UIC Forum the other week. And, you know, it was a really good conference, and I talked about the importance, and right here in the state, of transit, of transportation, period. You know, we've had a lot of projects and programs. The Atlantic Expressway, unfortunately, ran into some issues, but one of the things that I mentioned at that forum was court case notwithstanding. You know, we got to deal the cards up straight. We really needed that road, and the jury is still not out on it. But what happened was we really didn't get a lot of support from the outside. Oh, it's a boondoggle. It's a road to nowhere. No, it goes from Manhattan to Lowell, Indiana. And then when the kibosh got put on it, the next thing, and I, you know, sort of skewered the press. The next day, they started from a positive vein talking about Route 53 expansion up north. Yeah, if it's north, it's good. If it's south, it's bad. And see, I'm always going to fight that. So we've got to tell our own story, I think. But you're right about the state. I mean, let's face it, if we were a country, I think we'd be 20th in terms of output. We just have an opportunity to make things a lot better, especially for those millennials who are really propagating, and we want them to stay because we've turned into a service economy so much more than manufacturing, although I want to see manufacturing come back too. So there's a lot of opportunities, a lot of work to be done.
Steve, did you have?
Yeah, the state has a statute that says unfunded mandates aren't allowed, yet continually we get unfunded mandates coming down. It affects the colleges, it affects the police departments, it affects our county. You know, how come the state cuts money off and then turns around and says to the county or any other local unit, you pay for it because we said you need to do it, and they don't have the money to begin with. So what can we do to stop these unfunded mandates?
Well, stop saying unfunded mandates. Look, we get that, and there have been some legislation that's been passed. There may be a different political point of view, but so-called unfunded mandates back in the past, I mean, equal access and to public facilities was an unfunded mandate, but I think we would all agree that something like that should have passed. There are bills, especially dealing with education, that do deal with that. Every piece of legislation we pass is a mandate to some degree. Those things that prohibit local governments from doing what they need to do in many cases are stricter. So there were committees set up to look at them. There's been legislation that's been passed. So, you know, it's something that we have been working on a long time, but at the same time, we can't let that constantly be a meme, because everything, enabling legislation, like it or not, for many units of government comes from the state. It just does. So I think that units of local government, and they do to many, to a great degree, IML and some of the organizations that deal with county government, township government, do come to us, and we do listen to what they have to say. But again, remember, the state is a lot of different entities. We're part of one of them as the legislature. The governor and the executive branch through through their powers and through administrative powers, sometimes can promulgate regulations too. So you got to be clear who you're talking about.
And Mark, did you have, I think Mark had a comment as well.
Yeah, on both things. Yeah, we need to limit unfunded mandates. What do we call them? You didn't want to call them unfunded mandates. Do you have a different term?
No, well, we can come up with one.
Okay. All right.
Euphemisms are us.
I don't like putting extra burdens on local governments unless they're necessary. So sometimes they are. I think if you went through my voting record, there's probably somewhere along the way where I voted for a quote-unquote unfunded mandate or extra burden for you guys. But I mean, I'll bring up the same-day voter registration one. I think there was a more efficient way to have same-day voter registration. That cost the county about $1.4 million. And I thought if it was centralized more, okay, a couple million. And the bill that I offered centralized it, which I thought made more sense because as opposed to having high-speed internet access and people trained at every single precinct not knowing where there was going to be a rush, if you have one per township, even if you're doing a voter drive, it's easier to get people on a bus and bring them to one centralized location than try to find what precinct they belong to. So there was a way to do same-day voter registration, in my opinion, in a more efficient manner. You could advertise, hey, if you haven't registered to vote yet, in Plainfield Township, it's at the Plainfield Township building on 123 Lockport Street or whatever, and that would have saved the county a couple $1 million. So we do have to be judicious. I believe that in Springfield, we passed a lot of bills without knowing what the down-the-line consequences are. We think we know, but we don't really know. So I do believe we have to be more cautious. At the same time, the counties have to be, they have to speak out more. But that bill came out of nowhere, passed last week of session. I don't know if the clerks had the time to fully understand the cost, and it wasn't until the following session that they understood the cost. But that $2 million was probably close to what your entire PTEL tax increase would be, right? So you could have kept taxes flat or lower taxes if we just passed a bill that was more efficient, that didn't make it harder for anybody to vote. In many ways, it might have made it easier to vote. So I'm concerned about extra burdens that we place on you.
And you know, government and governance is very flexible. Right now, PTEL, that at the time that it was implemented, back in the 80s, made a lot of sense. It sounds good, property tax extension limitation law. Now, many local governments say, well, PTEL is hurting. You know, home rule in 1970 at the CONCON, home rule's good. Now, many other municipalities want to be home rule because they think that what has happened is we've set up a bipartite system of governance where you have some and the haves and you have the have-nots. So again, government and governance and what's good and what's bad is flexible. That's why, you know, it can't be a spectator sport. Everybody has to wade in and say, hey, maybe this is, you know, gone past its useful life. Let's change it. I mean, that's why part of all the laws we pass, since about 12,000 every 2 years, many of them are amendments or changes to old laws, and that's a good thing.
I'd like to make, first I'd like to make a comment on something that Representative Reilly mentioned, kind of briefly, but I want to elaborate on it a little bit, and that is the South Side. I'm a lifelong South Sider, by the way. Started on the south side of Chicago to the south suburbs. And there seems to be this setup where northern communities get everything, and downstate doesn't do so bad either. It seems they get a disproportionate part, and it's always on the...
At least in terms of road money.
Yeah, at least in terms of road money, and you know, and more burden falls on the south side, or we get the short end of the stick, and that includes Governor State. There's a reason Governor State gets less money than everyone else, because it's on the south side. I really believe that. So we do seem to get the short end of the stick, even though when it comes to economic development, we've always burdened the heavy industries, we've always burdened the transportation. I didn't say burden, we do have the advantage, but it's a burden in the sense that, you know, we have to deal with congestion and so forth. So it's kind of like, there was, many years ago, if you look at Hyde Park, for example, many of the wealthy folks lived there during the week, and then they went up to the northern suburbs where they actually lived, because they didn't have to put up with all the mess that goes along with industry sometimes. So That's just my little statement, but I want to get back to also when you talk about unfunded mandates. By not having a budget in itself is like an unfunded mandate, because local governments, including Will County, have been forced to pick up some of the burden of programs that we feel are so essential that we can't let them go. So I just wanted to say, not having the budget puts a lot of burden on our budgets, not only from not receiving funds, but we have to take our other funds that maybe for other purposes and reallocate to boost up programs, such as the health department. Even though we had to advance them $3 million more of a loan, I hope, you know. But it is, in my view, somewhat of an unfunded mandate, because we have to pick up the slack on these programs.
That's true. I think, and we could have a, hope, maybe I will, another session on inequities. When I spoke to Transport Chicago, one of the things that I said is that coincidence that keeps happening is not coincidence, it's policy. And so we were talking about the CTA, and I said, draw the CTA map. The CTA map tells on itself in terms of that whole regionalism thing. Skokie Swift, Evanston Express, that's not Chicago. O'Hare wouldn't be in Chicago if it wasn't for the Kennedy Expressway. It goes to Forest Park, Illinois, going west. Where does it go south? 95th Street, which ain't the south suburbs. And I told them about that, and that's why we continually fight, ladies and gentlemen. If you go to RTAM's, RTA's, sort of data management site, it says that the South Suburban region, basically the mayors and managers, South Suburban mayors and managers, Southwest, we pay $16 million a year through the 1% sales tax that goes to the RTA. $16 million to get no CTA services. And that's the kind of research you got to do. Those are the kinds of things that you fight. And there's a bad bill that I'm trying to kill, which says that the CTA wants to do special projects, not by floating a bond, but by creating a series of TIF districts. So you're soaking the very people who you're not really serving anyway. And ladies and gentlemen, that's what public policy and that's what fighting for your region is all about. We're an important region. You guys are very important down here. You go south and even pick up the northern part of Kankakee, you're talking about 750,000 to 1 million people. That's part of the Southland. We have to be sure that we get the resources we deserve. Not stuff that we want, but stuff that we should have. And that's why we fight.
Thank you. Ray?
I just want to go back to something you talked about with uncertainty. I think that is such a key component in this entire thing. When I look out past you in the audience and I see our health department and their uncertainty, and I see our transportation department and they're looking at, there was talks, RTA, they're kicking things around, that's uncertainty. I look at our workforce development out there, and we had to give them a stopgap measure last year, that's uncertainty. These children that go to other schools in other states and never come back, you're absolutely correct. I can tell you, my daughter's a junior, we've been looking at schools now. Unfortunately, not one of them is in the state of Illinois. When you put the criteria and the money, and these are National Honor Society students, her and her friends, and they're not coming back. But I think what's happening down in Springfield, and it's unfortunate because, I really respect the fact that both of you, from both sides of the aisle, came here and you're talking, and it's great that we stand together in Will County, but it's really time for these representatives and these senators to stand together for the state of Illinois, because it's really nice to see a Republican wave a flag that we won the battle today, or a Democrat win the battle today and they're waving their flag, but in the end, the entire state is losing the war. And until we figure this out, we're just going to keep spinning our wheels. And I understand the games and I understand the political games, but we have a partisan board here too, and sometimes we have to get together and make things happen. And I'm very proud of the work that we've done in Will County. And I know, and most of the time, you're exactly right, rarely do we ever have a real big political issue. And I understand the complexity with the locations down there, but I would just hope that when you leave this meeting today that we could find that little extra something to try to win that war, because Illinois is a great state.
It is.
We are in a great location. It doesn't get any better than having a port, the biggest inland port, the transportation system, everything that we have in this state. And to have it screwed up is just beyond comprehension.
Yeah, since you've been talking about transportation, Representative,
Yeah, I knew that was coming.
and Ray has just mentioned the world's largest inland port, or North America's largest inland port. I'd like you guys to sit down and talk to IDOT, find out what the plans are for the replacement of bridges over the Des Plaines River and replacement of bridges over Interstate 80, what impact that has on this financial engine for the state of Illinois when that has to be done.
I will, and I have.
It's my understanding that all 4 of those bridges need to be replaced within the next 10 years.
Yeah.
And without the Iliana Expressway, there's no viable alternative for transportation going in and out of that intermodal facility. I think somehow or another we need to get the Iliana back on track.
Well, I think so too. Actually, and like I said, I think we have a lot of little sub-meetings I'd be more happy to come to. It's not dead as far as I'm concerned. Something that good, and the application goes from floor to ceiling. And for someone to say, oh, there was some unfairness, that's nonsense. That's nonsense. I thought that all of the people that said that they were going to go to the appellate court were going to go. They all pulled back. But it's still something that's viable. Randy Blankenhorn is someone that most of us know. He headed up CMAP. I've talked to Randy on many occasions. He's just been sort of non-committal. I mean, he knows, that, what I'm talking about. He has a full understanding of some of those concerns, especially with regard to roads and bridges. He is in a tenuous situation, and I would hope that I could appeal to his sense of regional planning, for him to come out and make some decisions about some of these really very simple fixes that have been needed for a long time.
I have my wrap up, that's about it. I don't have anything else to add to that.
Would you like to go ahead and?
Yeah, and, I want to hit on what Commissioner Howard said, and then Ray talked about as well. As far as trashing the state, you're right. And I said this a long time ago, and it's actually starting to hit home. Not only do we have, so we've got some of the best farmland in the world, our transportation center. City of Chicago is certainly premier in the Midwest. Our universities, our workforce, our location geographically. And then another thing I talked about is we've got access to 75% of the world's fresh surface water, which water is pretty important to a growing area. Just ask people out in the southeast or the southwest. It's an important issue. Literally, we have everything going for us as a state, except for one thing, and that's the people under that dome not getting together in Springfield. That is literally the only thing holding us back. We make bad decisions down there. I'm going to give you an example of one small one. We renovated Soldier Field for about $700 million. Indianapolis built Lucas Oil Field for about $700 million. One Super Bowl had a net profit for that city of half of the cost of that. They made $350 million net by having one Super Bowl, because they built a retractable dome stadium. They got the Super Bowl, they get the Final Four every few years, they get the Big Ten championship every year. They spent the same amount of money as us. It's not always how much you spend, it's how you spend it. I mean, that's one small example, but if we got our act together, I think Illinois is hugely, it's destined for great things. But the biggest population that's moving out of the state right now, just mathematically, it's millennials. That's the scary thing. It's not because of retirees going to Florida. Millennials are the biggest age group moving out of the state. So the bad news is we don't have our stuff together. The good news is if we got our stuff together, we're not Mississippi, right? We have all the resources we need to make the state great again. We just need to get together and make it happen. So that's kind of been the drum I've been beating the last year and a half.
Al, did you?
I'm shying away from those kinds of statements about making things great again. We're already great, man. We're already great. What he says is correct, except for there was another unit of government that I think kind of messed up. You know, that wasn't all, the renovation all wasn't the state. It was the city of Chicago and a lot of those entities. Right now, you know, there's a big fight going on with the city and the Cubs about how the Ricketts family wants to redevelop that area around Wrigley Field. And that doesn't have anything to do with the state. It might through the Sports Facility Authority, but what happened with the rebuilding of Soldier Field was a little bit more complex. It had to do with you know, its historic designation and other kinds of things. But the fact of the matter is we've been around since 1818. I know because that's what this little button says, 1818. And again, remember I said we can't legislate or deal with things by anecdote. There's been a lot of bad decisions made since 1818, a lot of good ones too. The people who are down there right now are no different than some other General Assembly years and years ago. We've had divided government before. So there's really nothing new. There's really nothing new. But what we have to do is to stop trying to always look at things through gaining the hearts and minds of the public. There is no, excuse me, I'm losing my voice. I've been speaking a lot of places the last few days. There is nothing new. Many times, you know, how we propagate our information always comes through some sort of meme for the public. And that is why the public, because we've told them so, says, well, Rep, I want this, but don't raise my taxes. And we try to do it. That's the problem. So everybody's got to understand how their government's run, the limits of government, but what government, in fact, can do. And again, I tell people all the time that this is not a spectator sport. Everybody's got to wade in. One of the greatest bills I've ever passed, in 10 years I've been down there, came from a woman that I met on the street. That's government in action. And so we can continue to do these things. We know that on my side, there's some things we're going to have to give up. There's some things they're going to have to give up on the other side of the aisle. But when we come together, just like the old bell-shaped curve, I think that we will do the best that we can given the resources that we have. And I know I'm willing to do that, and many people on the other side of the aisle are willing to do that. It shouldn't have anything to do with an impending election. But that's where we are. And so we're going to continue to work, and because in the end, the people of this state are hanging in the balance, and they're looking for us for leadership.
I cannot.
Sounds like I've been in a debate.
No, that was good. I can't even thank you enough. And you know, I do have to put the disclaimer. Everyone is looking, you know, talking about their kids going out of school. You know, mine just graduated from California, Colorado. My youngest is going to Florida. But I will have to say, my oldest graduated from San Diego. Everyone said she wouldn't come back, and she's living in Chicago, working for Groupon. So they do come back.
That, and we've gone to graduations, and every graduation I've been to is full. And you have a lot of people going to, everybody wants to go to the vaunted U of I, still. So let's not take that to a ridiculous extreme. You know, kids are going, you know, to our schools. They should. We should encourage more of them. We should encourage people come from other states to come to our schools. So again, government's a work in progress. Let's continue working.
And you have, and like I said, both of you have, you know, the thing we had when we had our priorities and we made our agenda for this year. And we talked about it, this committee right here, and we worked very hard. And one thing that we had talked about is that that priority list or agenda does not, you have to have like anything of dollars allocated. We have things, we still have a lot that needs to be done, as Speaker Mustis just brought out with, you know, with our quarries, with electronic recycling. I'm going to talk to you guys later. We have, you know, an issue over the Forest Reserve right now with towing, so that's going to be something that that we need down the line. So we do need a lot from you, but the biggest thing that I am going to speak for in this whole committee and this county and everyone is just to stop pushing, you know, taking away the dollars and pushing it onto the backs of the local. And just let us, we're doing amazing here in the county and our municipalities. Just all I'm asking for you guys when you get down there and you're making these votes of, let us do our job, let us keep going, you know, don't stop anything that we have, and please stop pushing down any of those responsibilities to us. That's my only message that I would have here.
Well, for other
Yeah.
local governments too, things like that are near and dear to me, like the LGDF and, you know, CPPRT and all those kinds of things. Don't forget that stuff. Some of us are working hard to be sure that those aren't diminished either, but that's a different story.
No. And we know that, and it's funny, we have Julie who came all the way up from Springfield, and Brent that came across the county to speak. I know after all that, do you have anything to add?
Well, first of all, good lobbyists will never go after the legislators because, you know, we could say something and I wouldn't want to insult them in any way. No, we have nothing.
You want us to be able to
Besides, Brent still has his tag, so he's still one of us.
The only thing that I might ask the representatives to comment on is how you see the process moving forward with, you know, working groups are meeting. We're scheduled for a session tomorrow, but that's been canceled. So how do you see the process moving forward over the next few weeks before the new fiscal year begins?
Oh, that would be you, Representative Reilly.
Well, you know, many times I go around, I get asked a lot of things that I can't even answer. And it's not that I don't have an answer. You know, what's the governor going to, I can't speak for him. Or what's this? It's a crystal ball. But the working groups are meeting. And as I said before, a budget document, easy, very easy. The guidance behind it, that's what's a little tougher. But the working groups are working together. And I suspect that at some point, and again, I don't want to promise anything, you know, I don't want to promise things I can't deliver. But I would suspect that pretty soon they will have something, you know, for us. You know, we have budget plans. Maybe everybody doesn't agree with them, but at least it's a template. And I think the working groups, when they get together behind closed doors, they feel sort of free, you know, to come up with ideas that might even to the outside look like they're going against what people think their ideology may be. And that's a good thing, frankly, in some cases. So I have some hope that something will come out of these working groups pretty soon. I've been there, so.
You can correct me if I'm wrong, I think they're working on the 6 month, right?
6 months, right.
The stopgap. So I think we'll get a stopgap. I think it'll have almost unanimous support. I'm against it, but I haven't committed to voting against it or for it. I think it's better than nothing, but I do, and I've been wrong about just about everything in this year and a half about predicting what's going to happen, so don't read too much into it, but it seems like there's a bipartisan push from leadership to get past the election. So it looks like that's the direction that the General Assembly is going.
So, just so that the board members understand the difference between a full 6 month year or 6 month budget and a stopgap budget. The stopgap budget, still not everything is funded, that's correct?
That's correct.
So, obviously, we would still have concerns about the services that, you know, the county provides that might not be included in the stopgap.
But you see, with all of this work, once if the elections loom large in terms of what we, you know, our work product, once that's over, we can still come back and do the rest of the year. Very, very simply, very simply.
I would imagine that the idea is to do some social service funding as well with the stopgap. It's just not going to be something that you could double and get to balance. So, right? I mean,
Yeah,
I think
that's true.
they're trying to give a little bit more rope to everybody to get past the election. So.
And there's no plans of like possibly anything with our motor fuel tax or 911 dollars or anything that if these pass through, so I mean, instead of going to be able to flow in the LBF, and is any of that in play of being in jeopardy?
There's, see.
This is what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I just had to call it as it is.
Well, I can understand you calling it as it is, but you know, for example, you talked about health. There's a lot of health departments all over the state that are hurting, and some of those issues, everything is on the table. everything's on the tip. So when you talk about, are these specifics going to happen, it's hard to say. Because again, being in leadership, I've gone to all of the working groups, but I'm not exactly sure what all the nuances of what they're working on is. And so when they say, hey, we've got this idea, and I look and with my flying eye, and I see that there's something that deals with the LGDF or something like that, then we can deal with that at that point. But I'm not exactly sure, what, I've seen how they're making the sausage. I'm not sure of all the ingredients.
There always seems to be a consensus on broad-based, like, we want to fund education, we want to fund some capital projects, but when you get to the details, it all seems to fall apart.
Well, that's because you find something in it, frankly, that maybe you can't deal with, maybe are sort of non-starters. To the credit of the administration, some of the things, turnaround agenda ideas, some of that has kind of gone away as we try to deal with those budgetary items, and I think that's a good thing. I think that's a good thing.
One real quick question, comment. When we were going to build our house, I had to make sure that I had the income to actually pay for building my house. Now, the county right now is on the verge of borrowing a whole lot of money for some capital projects. So this is the uncertainty that we talk about on a grand scale. So basically, if our business model is going to align in the future, the county is going to assume different roles, take on different services, or pay for services now that are provided by the state, I think this has a large effect on that. So as a county board member, the dilemma that I have is basically, do we mortgage our future on the uncertainty that we're looking at right now on the state level, or do we step back and wait and see what happens here? That's the reality of this whole thing.
Sure.
So, and
sure.
Again, it's affecting our way of doing business right now.
Well, that's true. That's true. And that is the consequence of the balkanization that we have in the state. If I were king of the forest, I would do something different. We are where we are, and in a way, we put ourselves there. And it's a shame that all of these bad things have to happen to make folks realize that, hey, maybe from the beginning, we should have had a different outlook. And I think, as I say, I think we're going to get there. But it's going to be tough. I mean, there are people who have said that chaos and confusion, sometimes can work as leverage. Now, I don't know if that's true, but what it has done is it has added to the uncertainty that everybody feels.
As a carpenter in construction, there's an old saying too that says chaos is cash. So there's a lot of people that profit off of chaos. So.
Let me get that. I don't know whether it's 6 months from now, or a year from now, or 5 years from now, but eventually we're going to be better off than where we are now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, I've said this 5 times, and you guys know that, and I'm just so glad that everyone was able to hear Representative Reilly and Representative Batinick come in and kind of explain, and this is, like I said, both of them have been amazing, as well as, and others in Springfield and Brent and Julie. Thank you too for everything you do. We're going to keep up the fight, and everyone has a lot of their reasons. So I am, there's no other new business, no executive. Oh,
I have one item for new business.
Thank you, Representative.
I passed out a resolution to everybody. I passed out a resolution to everybody that I made, and we can't vote on it, but I wanted to get it started so that by next month, we can have the proper type of legislation drafted to enact some kind of provision to allow members of the Will County Board and commissioners of the Forest Reserve that are legally licensed to carry concealed, to be allowed to carry concealed in the county buildings. And the reason for that is that if you listen to the news ever since that terrible event in Orlando, we at Will County are a soft target. And in order to prevent being a soft target, we have in the county board members that are licensed to carry, at least 10 of us. and we don't need to pay us. All we have to do is be able to carry our weapons with us, concealed so nobody sees them. Now, I cited on this resolution different types of government entities that allow concealed carry for their members. For instance, a township can appoint an enforcement officer with the same exact duties and responsibilities of a policeman, and that can be up for 1 year. Then the city of Chicago aldermen are allowed to carry, and that's done under an 1872 law, which I couldn't find anywhere, but that's where that comes from. Then there's a state of Illinois law that allows for a conservator of peace. So what I wanted to do was start this rolling. I gave it to Mary Tatro to look at, and I think it's real important that as a county board that since there are a number of us that have the ability to carry concealed, we should be able to carry our weapons only in the county buildings, nowhere else. That's, so I'm not asking to be able to walk around all the time with the thing, go anywhere I want. I'm saying in the county building, and it would be a lot cheaper to have our members walking around than hiring 10 or 15 different officers to sit around and go to meetings and protect us if something happens. And by the way, if there's two officers in the room, that's not really all that much protection. If there's 6 of us in the room, plus the officer or one officer, that's a lot of protection. So, I'm just pointing it out.
No,
I
it's
think
good.
that most
I'm
of
right
our
in the
board
middle. I
wants.
got Don over to the right. I got you and Gretchen on the other side. I'm in. It's not funny at all. This is scary, and yeah, to know me, I get nervous. I laugh. So we will look at that. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Did you have?
I just want to know if the state's attorney was going to be giving us an opinion on this.
Well, maybe Don. Yeah, you can look at. She hasn't looked. Mary
Well,
hasn't.
I did just receive it today, but my recollection, I'll have to verify the law, is that as of right now, the state statutes prohibit firearms in the county. The provisions that Mr. Balich cited are not in the county code. So therefore municipalities, townships, which would not give you any authority. So whether there is some separate authority, I'm not aware of any other authority in the county's code that would allow you to make exceptions for county board members, but I will have to look.
If you look at the township code,
Is there any,
there's
sorry, second.
for the state
there any public
statute
comment?
allows the township code, they have enforcement officers.
Okay, being none, no chair. I will need a motion to adjourn. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.